Hello and welcome to Scholars Hub at Home. I'm Carrie Williams, Associate Director for Alumni Events at York University. Thank you so much for joining us for today's lecture titled Reactions to COVID-19 News Overload and Its Impact on Work. This is with Rudan Shao, Associate Professor, Organizational Studies from the Schulich School of Business. I'll begin with our land acknowledgement. Since this isn't a virtual event and we're not all in the same space, I recognize that I might not acknowledge the territory that you are currently on. And if this is the case, please take the responsibility to acknowledge the traditional territory where you are and the current treaty holders. The website native-land.ca is a good resource for this. As a member of the York University community, I recognize that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located that precede the establishment of the university. York University acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Takaranto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat, and it is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably care and share for the Great Lakes region. I'd also like to acknowledge that, as many of you know, February is Black History Month, which for us here at York provides an important opportunity to recognize the contributions, achievements, and histories of my people, Black students, staff, faculty, course instructors, and alumni, and the many ways we enrich the university's experience throughout the year. There are several virtual events happening at York this month, and we invite you to visit our Black History Month events page at yorku.ca/about/Black History Month to learn more. We do like to conduct a quick poll before each lecture. Today's question in relation to the topic is, how would you rate your knowledge regarding the topic of today's presentation? A poll should pop up on your screen right now, and I'll give everyone a moment to respond. Okay, so over 60% of you were saying that you are somewhat informed about the topic, so that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's always helpful for our speakers to know who's in the audience. If you need help with Zoom webinar, please feel free to click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and enter your question there. Our team is ready to help you. That same button may be used to submit questions for our speaker to answer during the Q&A period following her lecture. Please know that all of your questions and comments are visible to our speaker and to the staff working behind the scenes. We ask that you keep your comments relevant and respectful. Today's talk features Rudan Shao. Rudan is an Associate Professor of Organizational Behavior in Organization Studies at the Schulich School of Business. Her research interests lie in corporate social responsibility, cross-cultural management, business ethics and ethical decision-making, organizational justice, and strategic human resource management. Her work has been published in the Journal of Applied Psychology, Organizational Behavior and Human Decision Processes, Personnel Psychology, and the Journal of Management. We are very pleased that she could join us today. Welcome, Dr. Shao. Hi.
Hi, thank you, Carrie, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm Rudan. Today, I'm very happy to have this opportunity to share my research work, where we investigated employees' responses when they exposed to COVID-19 news. So just let me take 1 second to share my screen. Are we good? Is everyone okay to see my slides?
Yes, that looks great. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, everyone. So in this study, we investigate people's response when they are exposed to COVID-19 related news. So we'll remember like about 2 years ago, World Health Organization has declared the outbreak of COVID-19 as a global pandemic. Since then, the media coverage of the COVID-19 information has been virtually nonstop. I assume that you all use cell phone or use internet to search for news or information, or maybe your cell phone apps have the function to provide notification about this COVID-19 related news. So we frequently receiving this COVID-19 information. So Paula, may I trouble you to run a poll to the audience and then regarding some question regarding the frequency you read or check out or receive COVID-19 information?
The poll has launched. If you can see
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
Yes, I can see that. Let's see the response. Okay, so we can see the majority of the audience actually frequently receiving this COVID-19 information. We have another question, which is quite similar. It's just a difference from different sources. This one is from, so we basically are receiving information from different sources. Paula, we have a second question. If possible, can you post that? This time it's from the internet. It just take a few seconds for us to see the results. Okay, again, just most of us frequently receiving and checking out COVID-19 information online as well. So we are receiving all these information from various sources. And then if you enter COVID-19 in the Google search function, you will see that the COVID-19 information is usually presented along the COVID-19 is about the confirmed cases, or the death toll, or the mortality rate. So all these COVID-19 information has been associated the notion of death with COVID-19. So that's why in our research, we expect when people are exposed to COVID-19 news or having experienced COVID-19 news overload, they actually can experience death salience. What do you mean by death salience? So typically, usually, we don't think about death on a daily basis. Only when there's an event happening or there's an environmental cue potentially stimulate our concern or worry about our own health, safety, and death. We argue that being exposed to COVID-19 information can trigger such death salience, makes the death more proximal, relevant, make us worry about our safety, health, and also the possibility of contracting COVID-19 and death. So when people are facing this death salience triggered by COVID-19 information, how are they going to respond? That's the question we're going to address in this research. We basically can draw on two theories to explain when working adults are exposed to COVID-19 information, what could be their psychological response, what could be their emotions, cognitively, how they're going to respond, and then what could be the potential implication on their workplace behavior, what do they do at work, and then the organizational context, the organizational actions, what could be the specific organizational actions in terms of corporate social responsibility, how they help employees to cope with the stress associated with the global health crisis. That's a question we want to answer in this research. So before I explain our research ideas, I would like to just briefly explain the theoretical foundation. The two theories offer theoretical insights regarding how people will respond when they are facing COVID-19 news. One theory is about the terror management theory. This theory is mainly about explaining when people approach death, they might experience very negative emotions, potentially leading to maladaptive responses. So this theory emphasizing more about the maladaptive, dysfunctional responses. On the other hand, there's a generativity theory suggesting when people are aging, when they approach the notion of death, usually they might take a more positive and just a functional approach. They might respond in positive ways. So based on these two theories, we propose specific hypotheses or research ideas regarding employees' response when they are facing COVID-19 news. So specifically, taking the terror management theory perspective, when people are exposed to a trigger or cue that trigger their death ceilings, they are more likely to experience this anxiety, where we labeled academically like death anxiety. This anxious feeling is more about concern, worry about your own mortality, or worry about your own safety, health, and the possibility of contracting this new virus. When people are experiencing this death anxiety, we take efforts, attention, energy to mitigate such emotional experience because this is really negative. It can be very stressful. So what can we do to mitigate such death anxiety? For example, we can suppress death-related thoughts. We can do other things to distract our attention, or we can deny our vulnerability to this new virus. We can think, okay, I'm healthy. I go to the gym regularly. I exercise. I don't smoke. I eat healthy meals. So I'm less vulnerable to this new virus. Or I'm relatively young. This is more threatening to elderly people. So there could be various ways we take effort to mitigate death anxiety. When we are trying to mitigate our death anxiety, this negative feeling, we were not able to put enough effort and attention, energy to our work because we've been distracted by this anxiety. So that's why we predict when employees are exposed to COVID-19 news, they are likely to experience death anxiety. To mitigate death anxiety, they actually end up having reduced effort at work, where we labeled as work withdrawal in this research. That's the negative reaction people can have. On the other hand, generativity theory proposed actually people can respond to the notion of death in a very positive way. So originally, this theory is proposed to explain when people are aging, when they approach the notion of death, they start to think or start to consider, deliberate the meaning and purpose of their life. They want to know. For example, they might ask such question like how I want other people to remember me after I pass away. Thinking about the meaning and purpose of one's life, they are motivated to contribute to the next generation, to other people around them, to make connection to other people. So that's why we propose when people are exposed to a cue, a trigger of mortality salience, they are likely to engage a positive reflection. And such positive reflection can be very prosocial in nature, potentially leading to their helping behavior like at work, like helping a colleague. So for example, during the pandemic, we move everything online. We are teaching online, our students are online. Everyone's new about this new teaching mode. And then there are colleagues offer help and support to each other to try to help everyone to make a very smooth shift to this new online teaching format. So there could be an example regarding this helping behavior at work. So we can respond to such negative news in a very positive way. Then how organizations' actions can shape employees' response. In this research, we focus on the internal, employee-oriented, and external stakeholder-oriented corporate social responsibility initiatives. We know that since the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of companies are implementing new CSR initiatives targeting the employees with the aim to provide support and help for the employee. So for example, like the picture showing here, for grocery stores, most of them are just setting up new safety rules, procedures, or providing this shield to protect their employees when they are interacting with customers on a daily basis. Some companies are providing personal protection equipment. Some companies are offering free mental health program or free counseling session. Some companies are offering very flexible working schedule to help employees balance work and non-work demands. And some companies are offering free training to help employees enhance their knowledge regarding this new virus. All these various approach or measures or procedures or practices taken by the company are trying to help the employee cope better, are trying to make sure the employee feels safer and protect them, providing support. So when employees are exposed to this COVID-19 information that can trigger death ceilings, These support and help from their employer actually can make employees feel safer, feel less concerned about this COVID-19 virus. That's why we expect for those employees whose company offering strong support and protection, they are less likely to experience death anxiety, thus are less likely to reduce effort at work, basically reduce their work withdrawal. So we propose internal CSR can mitigate people's negative response. Then how about external CSR? So since the beginning of the pandemic, companies are not only just implementing new initiatives targeting employees, they are also trying their best to go beyond their financial interests to support the society, to support the local community to fight COVID. I want to share with you a short video clip regarding an example of such external CSR activities.
Nike plans to donate thousands of shoes to frontline workers battling COVID-19, along with compression socks. Nike has teamed up with the nonprofit Good 360 to help deliver the shoes to workers in Chicago, LA, Memphis, New York City, and Europe. Nike is sending the Air Zoom Pulse, the shoe designed for those who spend a lot of time on their feet. Nike plans to donate.
Thank you. So basically, this is just one example where the company is just helping the frontline workers to fight COVID-19. There are other examples as well, like GE Appliances. They are providing medical equipment and supplies to healthcare professionals or paramedics and police officers to fight COVID-19. There are companies making financial donation to COVID-19 relief funds. So those are the various actions companies can take to try to support the society, the local community, or healthcare professional or frontline workers. So when companies are engaging these behaviors, employees can observe that, and some employees and be part of this new CSR initiative. These company behavior actually are promoting the pro-social values, and this company behavior are serving as good role model for employees to consider how they want to expand or increase the meaning and purpose of their life and the work. So employees facing companies' external CSR actions are likely to develop this positive reflection. They might consider how I can make a contribution in this difficult time. So we propose when employees observing their company's externally oriented CSR initiative, they are likely to engage in positive death reflection and potentially leading to more helping behaviors at work. So this figure presents our full model where we explain how people might respond in different ways, positive at the top, positive at the bottom, and negative at the top, and how firm functions can shape employees' negative and positive responses. To test our research idea, we conducted 2 studies among participants in Canada and in the United Kingdom. The study 1 is the data is collected from the GTA area. That's where I assume most of us just living in this area. So the participants, maybe you could be one of them if you are just serving on a Qualtrics panel. We collected data from Qualtrics, which is a professional company, support researchers. So here's the demographic information of our participants. Their average age is roughly 50, relatively about half of the participants are female workers, and most of them receive higher education. Their current tenure, work experience with the current employer is on average 13 years, and it's a very racially diverse group representing the population of GTA area. In terms of the research design or the data collection procedure, we collect data at 3 time points. At time 1, we collected information regarding people's COVID-19 information exposure. So just like the question you answered at the beginning of the talk, how frequently you receive checkout COVID-19 information. We also ask participants to report their observed, experienced corporate social responsibility initiatives, both internally oriented and external ones. at time 1. And 1 month after this time 1 data collection, and they reported their psychological responses in terms of experience death anxiety and also positive reflection. About 1 month after time 2, and then we asked them to report, self-report their behaviors at work. That's how we use research survey to collect data from our participants. The findings support most of our ideas except for the one associated with external CSR. So let me walk you through about the research findings. So specifically, we found when employees are exposed or experience COVID-19 news overload, they are likely to experience death anxiety. They feel anxious, and which positively result in their reduced effort at work, which we labeled as work withdrawal. On the other hand, when they are exposed to news overload, it also positively related to their reflection. This reflection is more about positive ones, how they can be more prosocial, how they can increase the meaning of their life, and then potentially leading to more helping behavior, like helping colleagues to complete a difficult task, support a colleague when they are not doing well. So that's about the findings consistent with our prediction. Also, we find that when companies are offering internal CSR initiatives to support and protect employees, employees are likely to experience less death anxiety, which is presented in this figure. So we can see this dotted line at the bottom. So basically these lines represent employees working in a company that provides strong support and protection to them. For them, when they are exposed to COVID-19 news, they don't experience any death anxiety, which means we don't observe the association between news overload and death anxiety. However, that's not the case for those employees who did not receive enough protection and support from their employer. So for this group of employees, they still experience death anxiety because due to their exposure to COVID-19 news. However, a prediction regarding the external CSR, it was not supported by the data. Specifically, we find that among this sample of participants, all of them will experience positive death reflection when they are exposed to COVID-19 information. No matter their company engage in more external CSR or providing stronger versus weaker support to external stakeholders, they still engage in positive death reflection. External CSR does not amplify or facilitate the development of positive reflection on death. To replicate our study 1 findings, we collected data from participants, working adults, people like us from the United Kingdom. This time, we collected data from Prolific, which is an online data collection platform. And we can see based on the demographic information, this group of participants are relatively younger, and then more than half of them are female workers. And most of them, again, receive higher education. They are having relatively shorter tenure. They are on average working for their current employer for 7 years. And then again, this is a racially diverse participants. Again, our data collection approach is similar, and this time we collect data at 2 time points. At time 1, we ask participants to explain to what extent they frequently receive COVID-19 information and ask them to report the internal and external CSR activities of their company. And then about 1 week later, we ask participants to report their psychological feelings, experience in terms of death anxiety and death reflection. And also at time 2, we ask them to rate their own workplace behavior. The findings are exactly the same, consistent with our findings in study 1. So specifically, again, we observe both positive and negative responses. Employees, when they are exposed to COVID-19 news, they experience death anxiety and positively death reflection, and with death anxiety leading to more withdrawal, and with positive reflection leading to more helping behavior. That's also supported in study 2. Again, we observe internal CSR activities can mitigate people's death anxiety when they experience COVID-19 news overload. Specifically, we can see the study 2 figure is quite similar to what we found in study 1. Again, for the dotted line, it represents employees working for a company, providing strong and protection and support to employees. For them, when they are exposed to COVID-19 information, they don't experience anxiety. And however, for those employees who don't receive enough support and protection from their employer, they will experience death anxiety, which also translates into their work withdrawal, reduced effort at work. Again, in this study too, we still did not find the role of external CSR to be salient. So specifically, that means for all the participants, when they are exposed to COVID-19 information, they experience positive death reflection, regardless of their company's external CSR initiatives. Well, this research has theoretical implications, but I think for most of us, the practical implications are more relevant. Well, since the beginning of the pandemic, there has been a lot of negative impact brought up by the COVID-19 crisis on our life and also our work. We are still not back to normal, and we've been emphasizing about this negative influence on our just work and also work-life balance. However, this research also points out the potential silver lining of the pandemic. It is possible that people might also take these opportunities to consider the meaning and purpose of their life, and they might want to find more meaning in their job and their life, potentially leading to more active, proactive, and pro-social behavior. And the other take-home message I think this talk is offering is, we know that during the pandemic, a lot of employees are suffering from both work and non-work demands, with young kids staying at home, learning online. That impose a lot of challenge for working adults. So when companies are offering support and protection to employees, it will help employees to cope more functionally with this global health crisis. So it's very important for managers and organizations to pay attention to implement this new program to support employees. Another thing we realize, people do engage in positive reflection when they are thinking about the possibility of their own mortality or contracting the COVID-19 virus. So how we can do to facilitate their positive reflection? Managers and organizations might consider offering social mindfulness training, such like to emphasizing the importance to get in connection with other people, how we want to just manage or facilitate good relationship both at work and at home, and also offering some internal communication or employee recognition program to make employees understand about their meaning, importance, value of their work. So they might be able to try to expand the meaning or try to put more effort in their work or try to make more contributions, not only to their employer, but also to the society, to the community as well. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for coming. And I look forward to hearing about your comments, thoughts about this research findings, and happy to answer any questions from you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Professor Shao. That was fascinating. We have a couple of questions from the audience. I'm actually going to start with one of my own, if you don't mind. So sorry, I should say before I get to my own question, just so everybody knows in the audience, we do have time for Q&A now. And again, just a reminder to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to enter your question, and we'll get to it. Just curious, and I'm not sure if you covered this in your, forgive me if you did cover this, the people that you researched, were they people who were not in a workplace throughout the pandemic, or were they all working from home? So were they in the workplace this whole time, or were they out?
So all of the participants, we have just a selection criteria. They have to be currently working. So they can be working from home or working as a frontline employees, but all of the participants were currently working when we were collecting the data. The first study was collected when Canada is experiencing, or Ontario is experiencing, the second wave. So it's back to September 2020. So that's where we started collecting data.
Right. And were there any differences in the employees who stayed in a workplace during the pandemic versus those who worked from home during the pandemic?
So because the sample size is 300, so roughly 70% of them are working from home. So it is possible those working from home might feel safer because they don't just
lower anxiety,
being exposed just to this virus more easily because they are working from home. But our data analysis did not show significant difference between these two groups of people working from home versus working online. I acknowledge it's possible the sample size also attribute to the non-difference, but we did not find any difference for this two group of employees.
Okay, that's really interesting because there's definitely a divide in people who've still been out and working these 2 years versus those who've been working from home. So that's really interesting that there wasn't much of a difference in what we saw. Question from Gordon. Hi, Gordon. His question is regarding the actual participation candidates. Can your conclusions be extended to other cultures, for example, Europe, Southeast Asia, or especially Indigenous people?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. So for this group of participants, we try to represent the population of GTA. So this is really a culturally diverse group. However, based on the questions, there are only, I think, the minority of the participants are from a very indigenous group. So I cannot speak for sure the findings are generalizable. However, I assume just when people are exposed to these just death-threatening information, they are likely to experience this anxious feelings. And then they might be considering about what's the meaning, purpose of my life, how people are going to remember me when I pass away. So I think this, at least people are psychologically, their response might be quite similar. And I need research data to support my prediction, but I think this phenomena is quite relevant, relatable to most of us. Did I answer the question, Gordon? Or yeah,
Gordon.
So yes, I think these findings are more applicable and generalizable.
And Gordon, feel free to drop us a note in the Q&A if you have a part B to that question. We now have a question from one of our viewers from Facebook. And they say, and I don't have the name, but they say, I'm interested in the differences in results as a function of income level. Any indication of lower, higher income levels may have on different trends? Oh, the question is from Peter from Facebook.
Oh, thank you. So this one is quite interesting. Well, this is not included in our original research ideas, but we did collect data regarding the income level of the participants. We have actually statistically controlled this variable in our analysis. So basically, we take into consideration about people's income when we are testing our research idea, and then our findings are consistent when we are including considering income. So I can say, based on the research findings, income does not affect people's response according to, so people with higher income or relatively lower income are still likely to experience death anxiety versus death reflection. Of course, I mean, if we are able to collect data from more participants, we should be able to have a higher statistical power to test the direct effect of income. My prediction is for those who are relatively having higher income, for them, they might experience less anxiety because income represents financial resources, potentially offering a financial security. It makes us feel safer. So for those with higher income, they might experience less dense anxiety, and they might be also more likely to engage in positive reflection because they have the time or resource, to deliberate the meaning. So yeah, that's my prediction, although we didn't test that idea in the data.
Thank you for that. Another question from the audience, Fernando. Fernando says, I am curious on one of the graphics. You included a measure of anxiety. How do you measure anxiety?
Yes, so let me try to show my slides again.
Sure.
Sorry. I think that will help answer the question. This is a measure of death anxiety. So basically, we ask participants the extent to which they agree with the following statement. So in these questions, basically, they are either just a direct way to assess to what extent you are afraid of to die, or you feel just a really dread or panic when thinking about the notion of death. So some more abstract notion of death or specific example of death, or things like heart attack that might lead individual deaths. So those are the questions we ask participants, the extent to which they agree they experience that when, after they receive the COVID-19 information.
That's really helpful. And again, like you said at the top of your lecture, you talked about, we just aren't really used to thinking about death with such frequency, since the pandemic started. I don't know if frequency, but
exactly.
we're not used to thinking about it so much. So of course it's sort of contributed to our anxiety levels. Another question for you. Why was the role of external corporate social responsibility not supported in your study? Sort of any thoughts on that?
Sure. So after the data collection, we were also thinking about these. So one possible reason could be companies are doing a lot of things like externally oriented CSR, or sometimes this could be supporting the environment, try to use a green material in their manufacturing process, or try to sell green product, promote green product to the customers. So all these various different kinds of external CSR initiatives like environmental protection, or just complying with the law regulation, respect the customers. So potentially this pro-social value may be diluted just in this process. So employees, when they observe all kinds of external CSR initiative, maybe it's difficult for them to find what's the core meaning or the pro-social nature of such behavior, because it could capture a lot of things beyond being pro-social. So that's why we figured, that's why when people observing their company's CSR program, they might just interpret this behavior in multiple ways. So potentially maybe some actions can be less relevant when with their positive death reflection. So it's less related to their reflection regarding how I want to connect with other people, how I want to make contribution. It could be just reserve energy. It could be go green. So that's why we feel these various CSR programs might not just be directly speak to their positive reflection. That's why we didn't find employees working with different companies differ on their positive reflection. Yeah. I hope just it's a good explanation or it's convincing.
We're getting some follow-up messages saying thank you for that answer. So I think you're good. Another question from Barbara. She asks, any evidence of participant ways of coping with their anxiety in socially, she puts in quotes, unacceptable ways, such as drugs, alcohol use, or self-isolation, or anything like that?
Yes, I think there are research supporting when people are experiencing death anxiety, we can find various approach to respond to mitigate such negative feeling. Like, for example, in my research, I focus on workplace behavior, or I focus on more direct response in terms of I suppress death-related thoughts. But there are various other ways people might use to mitigate negative feeling, like drinking. So the alcohol consumption has increased since the pandemic. Or maladaptive online shopping. People can do a lot of online shopping just to make them feel better or feel safer. And then there could be other ways like abuse of drugs. So again, there are research support. People can respond in a very negative way or dysfunctional way just to try to cope with the stress associated with the COVID-19 crisis. So it is possible.
Right. Do you think, thank you for that. Do you think the findings of your research would still hold true today, since we've been exposed to COVID now for almost 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, that's really good question. Actually, I posed that 2 questions at the beginning of the talk because I want to know, are people still motivated or receiving COVID-19 or check out COVID-19 information? Based on the response, I realized people are still receiving, no matter it's actively seeking for information or passively receiving information, we still get access to COVID-19 information, which means this information is still there. However, my response might be different. Maybe this time with the effectiveness of the vaccines, or maybe the variants can be less aggressive, we might feel relatively safer because the medical research is improving, healthcare professionals are more experienced. So we might feel relatively safer now. So it is possible 2 years later, people might experience less death anxiety when you are exposed to COVID-19 information. So that's a possibility. And on the other hand, people are also more likely to develop such reflection because reflection needs time. So after 2 years, it is possible for people to be more likely to just take a new perspective to evaluate their life, the purpose, meanings of their life. So I feel my findings might be hold conditionally. I feel the death anxiety's path might be mitigated or reduced. However, the reflection path can be emphasized or being stronger. So that's my prediction regarding people's response at this stage.
Based on your findings, what do you think it is important for organizations and managers to do in the wake of this pandemic? I'm particularly interested in your answer to this question as well as a manager.
Yeah, so I think just the pandemic is changing everything, and then employees are just handling a lot of things, either working from home or working as frontline worker. So both can be quite challenging. For those who work from home, they might have to manage the new technology, and then they might have to just try to complete the work and as efficiently as when they are working on site. And for those who are working on site, so people are just handling different challenges. I think manager organizations need to implement different programs for these 2 groups of employees. They having differential risk to be exposed to the new virus, but also they are facing different challenges. For those employees who are working from home, I think organizations might offer support for them to cope with the new technology, offering training regarding how to work from home and just how to just communicate effectively like video conference. However, for those working on site, it's more about offer protection to just like clean the high touch area, offering PPE, or help employees to feel safer, keep a safe distance of the working station, or protect the employee from if they have to deal with customer or clients or like healthcare professional working with deal with patients on a daily basis. So I think companies and managers need to implement different procedure practice to help protect these 2 groups of employees.
Thank you for that. And again, we're getting more quick comments from the audience, and thank you for answering my questions. Do you have plans for any follow-up studies now that we're in this stage of the pandemic?
Yeah, so actually, I am currently collecting data from call center employees in Korea. So for them, their working conditions is quite different from what we have here. So they don't have spacious working stations while they are answering customers' calls, which can be reduce their in-person contact with the customers, but still they are handling high demands from customers. So actually I'm studying how this pandemic are shaping their working motivation and attitudes performance at work. And also the company has introduced the AI, artificial intelligence system in the workplace. So I'm trying to understand the joint influence of the pandemic and also the AI system, how that will shape the call center employees' response, how this pandemic might lead to their experience less customer mistreatment, how the pandemic potentially can help them to maybe appreciate or being more appreciated by their customers. So that's the research ideas I'm currently investigating.
Okay, sounds fascinating. I mean, thank you so much for this. Just really, your study just bringing such a clear connection to the workplace responsibility and role in impacting people's mental health as it relates to this anxiety, impacting, whether they're withdrawn from work or being helpful. That's a really helpful piece of research for us to consider as employees, as managers. So thank you very much.
Thank you
for joining
Carrie.
us today. So
Thank
that
you,
is,
everyone.
yes, you too. So just thanks again for sharing your time with us. This is sort of at our end for questions, even though we have a few more coming in. You are welcome to turn your video off now if you would like, Professor Shah.
Sure. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you for having me. Bye.
Bye. For those of you who would like to share today's session with family or friends, it will be posted to our YouTube page at youtube.com/URQ-alumni. You can also watch any of the past lectures that we've had that you might have missed. Many of you have recently received a survey just last month from us asking for your feedback on the Scholars Hub sessions. And I want to take a moment to thank those of you who took the time to complete it. We appreciate your feedback and we will be able to use it in our planning going forward. But before we say goodbye to you all, we do have one last question, and that is a poll question. That is, how would you rate your knowledge of today's topic following this discussion? It should pop up on your screen right now. Scholars Hub will return in 2 weeks on Wednesday, March 2nd, with Johnny Rangtishanthanan, Professor of Operations Management and Information Systems at the Schulich School of Business, with his session on managing for severe supply chain disruptions, top research-based tips. This session will provide insights into what supply chain disruptions are, how they should be described, what triggers them, and how organizations should manage them. As everyday consumers, we are experiencing this ourselves, so this will be great learning. I also want to highlight an upcoming session of the York Circle at Home titled Cycles of Inequality and Exploitation in Nation Building. That's happening on Sunday, February 27th. You may find out more and register for either of these two events at yorku.ca/alumni and friends. Thank you for joining us today, and be well.